to the entertainer talking sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to talk about the prospect of the New York Giants potentially tagging Leonard Williams. Now, there's two different types of tags, and I will explain both of them in this video. I'll also go over the figures of both. I'm going to have a few videos up today. Last night I got caught up, meant to have a couple of prospect videos up, but I'll definitely get working on those today. Potential prospects that the New York Giants could be drafting. So I'm excited to get started on that. I also heard about the Tom Brady news. It's all over Giants Wire and all over the internet. I'm not going to bother making a video on that. That is absolute nonsense. The Giants will not be signing Tom Brady. I buy nothing into that. But I wanted to talk about the franchise tag and explain it a little further. I did some research into the difference between the transition tag and the franchise tag and whether or not it's a viable option for the New York Giants when it comes to Leonard Williams. Of course, reports have come out, not from Leonard Williams' mouth, but reporters who cover the Giants and things of that nature, that he's going to seek around $15 million. Now, Leonard Williams later came out. I saw some of my subscribers pointed it to me. I think it was on Instagram or Twitter, saying that he's never said a dollar amount. But it only makes sense when you really think about it and rationalize that he's going to want right around $15 million. And I'm going to explain why in this video. And I think when players hear the franchise tag, a lot of times they get scared off. In a lot of ways, the franchise tag or the transition tag is a bargaining chip because Leonard Williams knows the New York Giants have put themselves in this position by trading for him, and he knows that Dave Gettleman is going to do everything he can in order to keep him. Being that he would look like a fool if he gave up, those draft picks and got nothing back in terms of letting him go. Now, yes, the comp pick is certainly a possibility, but the only way a comp pick comes into play is if the New York Giants don't spend more money on someone else, which is very possible. They could do that if Leonard Williams went out there and signed a $14, $15, $16 million contract, which I don't think will happen. I don't think he would get that in the open market. However, with the New York Giants, he just might, and the transition and franchise tag might be the reason. Like I said, he has all the leverage, and if he were to get franchised, he would actually make more than $15 million a year. Now, of course, the advantage to franchise tagging someone is it gives you another year to evaluate the player, and you don't have to make a long-term commitment. But the reason why I think players should use this more often as a bargaining chip, yes, you run the risk of getting injured. No doubt about it. That's why Le'Veon Bell sat out. But you look at Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins made 24 and then $27 million the next year. Because the Redskins were in a similar situation, even though it's a different position, to where the New York Giants were. They didn't feel that Kirk Cousins was worth the investment of 4 or 5 years, possibly, similar to what the New York Giants may feel, about $15 million a year for Leonard Williams. So they actually paid him a little bit more than his market value for 2 years. Then he hit the open market, and he got paid handsomely for a team that was starving for a quarterback. So Kirk Cousins used the franchise tag perfectly, and I wouldn't be shocked if Leonard Williams does the same. Now, the reason why I think Leonard Williams, even though he may not be saying that he said that dollar amount, and that very well may be the case, but if I was his agent, I would look at the New York Giants situation, and I would tell him, listen, you're going to get $15, $16 million if you get franchise tagged. We know they have to sign you, otherwise they're going to look like fools, and Williams knows he could use that to his leverage. Now, the difference between the franchise tag and the transition tag. The transition tag is cheaper, and I will go over the exact figures in a second. However, it gives teams the ability to sign Leonard Williams. Now, the reason this may be the better option is because, one, it's cheaper, and two, I don't think teams are going to be willing to exceed the price of what the transition tag is for Leonard Williams. So even though it is rarely used, it might be what the New York Giants plan to do. We'll have to wait and see if they can't work out a long-term deal, because you get him at fairer market value. But we'll have to wait and see. Maybe a team's willing to give him more than that over the course of 2 or 3 years, and then the Giants would lose him entirely, and they also would not get a comp pick if they spent more on another free agent. It would completely negate the entire trade, and the Giants would just lose a 3rd and a 5th round pick, which is the risk that Dave Gettleman is running here if he does not bring back Leonard Williams. Of course, that 5th turns into a 4th if he brings him back. It's a complete mess. In my opinion, the Giants should have never traded him. Now, some people argue you want to test out the player before you sign him, but my answer to that is you could test the guy out on tape. Do your homework. You test all these players out on tape in free agency. When you look to sign these players. So regardless, yeah, I guess you want to see how he plays with your players on your team, but is that worth that price tag? I personally think not. And is it worth putting yourself in this position where you have zero leverage? The Jets would have been in this position where they had zero leverage, and they would have had to decide exactly what the New York Giants are trying to decide right now with Leonard Williams. But I wanted to jump into the options here with the franchise and the transition tag. There's Leonard Williams, and here is the chart. Now, these are projections, but it was based off of if the salary cap was $200 million, and it's right around that. So these figures may be off by a little bit, but regardless, they're right where they need to be. Now, if Williams qualified as a defensive end, which I don't think he will, it would cost $17.95 million to franchise tag him, and no team would have the ability to sign him. Transition tag, like I said, is significantly less. It's $15.322 for a defensive end. But I think Williams, being that he doesn't get sacks, will more than likely qualify as a defensive tackle. Now, we've talked about the number being $15 million. It's something that we don't even want to approach. But Leonard Williams has this in his back pocket. He could say, well, if they don't sign me to a long-term deal, they don't want to look like fools, they're going to have to pay $16.2 million on the franchise tag to only make a one-year commitment. I could play out the deal. I could have a fantastic year. And then I could get my $16 million on a multi-year contract. Or the Giants would have the ability to franchise tag me a second time, and then it would cost them about $19 or $18 million because it only goes up. So I don't see that happening. I don't think that it would be wise for the New York Giants to franchise tag him, because then they'd be in the same spot next year. And, they would have even less leverage. So that is why I don't necessarily know if this is the right option. You're actually paying them more, even though it's only a one-year commitment, and you're going to have no leverage the following year. Unless he plays horribly, I suppose, but I don't know. That's just the way I look at it. I think if you're going to keep him, you look to keep him on a 3 or 4 year deal, or you tag him and trade him, which I don't think any team is going to be willing to take on that price tag. Now, if they transition tag him, it will be $3 million less approximately at $13.258, and that maybe, if they're going to do a tag, that may be the better option at $13.258. Now, it's $3 million less. Now, the risk you run at signing him to that deal is a team could swoop in and offer him 13.5 over 4 years. And it's very possible that could happen. And if it happens, it happens. Now, I think the new rule, from what I read, is you could do both the transition tag and a franchise tag on 2 different players this year. That's not normally the case, but because next year the collective bargaining agreement, I think you're allowed to do it on 2 players, but there's not really another player on the New York Giants roster that I would look to tag. Ideally, at the end of the day, I would like the New York Giants to get this deal done in the $12 million range and keep this guy on a 4-year deal. That would be the best for both parties. But being that Leonard Williams knows he has this leverage, why would he sign the deal? That's what I got to ask myself, other than long-term security, and he doesn't have to worry about injury. But knowing if they franchise tag him, and that is probably what they would do. Like I said, most teams don't use the transition tag because they know they run the risk of a team swooping in and grabbing the player. Now, somebody might might not be willing to exceed that 13.2 because, quite frankly, most teams probably don't feel Leonard Williams, who doesn't get a lot of sacks, is worth more than that. But maybe a team desperate for a D tackle says, you know what? We'll give him 13.5, 13.6 on a 3 or 4 year deal. And that's possible. And then you run the risk of losing him entirely, which is why I think if the New York Giants look for a short-term solution, like most teams do in this instance, they will probably franchise tag him. It is incredibly rare that a team uses the transition tag. And if they franchise tag him, you're paying him 16.2. And that is why Leonard Williams knows he has the leverage in this situation. And it's why I don't think he's going to sign a deal for $11 million or $12 million. Because the Giants put themselves in this spot. And it's a year where the New York Giants have a lot of cap space, and they're looking to spend to improve their team. Well, if you spend and improve your team, you're not even going to get compensated for Leonard Williams if you bring in a player who makes more than what Leonard Williams does. The ball's in Leonard Williams' court. He has all the power, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, the New York Giants may have to franchise tag him and overpay at $16.2 million. But I don't see Williams signing a 4 or 5 year deal because of this situation with the tag. Everybody says that the franchise tag and the transition tag are horrible for NFL players because it doesn't give them more than a year commitment. But you can, there are certain instances, and in my opinion, this is one of them, where you could use it as a bargaining chip. This is the basement. This is what I know I'm going to get if you don't sign me to a long-term deal. So you're going to meet me close to that price range. That is what I would tell the New York Giants if I was Leonard Williams' agent. That is what I would be telling Leonard Williams if he was my client. And I think that's exactly what's being said. Even though Leonard Williams may not be saying he's not come out with a dollar amount, I think that's why everybody's saying that he's going to get right around $15 million or he's going to command right around $15 million. And hopefully he doesn't get it. I don't want him to get it, but if I was his agent, I'd be pushing for it, knowing that the franchise tag is 16.2 and knowing that the New York Giants, because they made the trade to acquire him, would look like absolute fools if they didn't keep him. I think he's going to try to command at least 14. But we'll have to wait and see. I wanted to go over the transition tag, the franchise tag, and whether or not I think the New York Giants should use it. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out, guys. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.